literally just burned a franchise to the ground. Like, this is a ground zero rebuild right now. There's so little on this team that I'm like, oh, I can see this all coming together.
That's right. And we're back too. The recording crashed for a second because the thing popped out. So,
Oh, how much of that did you get?
we got like the last three sentences.
Yes, short version. David Chepper hucked a drink at someone. Like, again, billionaires aren't your friends. They're, like, gummy by nature. You don't make an amount of money that is incomprehensible to the human brain because human evolution never anticipated we'd be around a billion of anything. And yet, somehow, this guy slimes to the top like the fattest cream, like the greasiest grease. And it really is amazing because like the Panthers weren't that bad for a while. They were like consistently like even after losing Cam Newton, they were at least consistently competing. They were like they were basically where the Saints and Buccaneers are, where it's like, well, they always have a chance to win the division. And then he comes in, assembles all these different, basically like flips around the coaching staff twice, overrules his coach, and makes a bad first overall pick. Like, I'm sorry, Bryce, but it's not going to happen here. Like, that last game was eye opening. I really do think just for like the fact that this is a ground zero rebuild, they just shouldn't play him like the final week.
Yeah.
Because either you need to trade him and completely start from scratch, or you need to build a completely new team around him, and it doesn't behoove you to have him go out there and get hit anymore. Like, astonishing. And I'm like, truly, the worst thing in the world is like an owner like this because it's like there's no recourse, there's no means of pushing them out. Like the Dan Snyder thing was like a true like one of one incident. Like it will probably never happen again, and it's only because Congress was threatening to get involved that you finally had to act. Like I don't like what a bummer for the Panthers fans out there, man.
Yeah, speaking of bummers, let's do a quick recap of the first half hour that we recorded. Because it is gone. And Carter just pitched out.
Oh, apparently Discord doesn't like when I sound like a sad dog.
Yeah, you blew the thing. So here's Kevin Carter quickly recapping what we've talked about so far. AFC South looks good. We like how they're doing. It's going down to the final week of who's in and who's out.
Literally, 3 out of the 4 teams have the same record and could make the playoffs depending on how these go. Lamar Jackson locks up affirms the Ravens as a team to beat, truly mollywopping the Miami Dolphins, probably locking up the MVP with his best statistical game. Dolphins, what the fuck, guys? Bradley Chubb tears his ACL down 30. Now they go from having a 3-game division lead to needing to beat the Bills in prime time against Josh Allen, who has famously had great games against the Dolphins. And it's not looking great. Don't sleep on games. Rams lock up their playoff spot against the New York Giants. Good for them. What a turnaround season. Special teams are very concerning, and it always sucks when a great offensive team has bad special teams.
And they're playing Carson Wentz week 18.
We did it. Woo! Woo, 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 woo. Mine was Falcons Bears. Falcons stink. I want federal investigations. I want like good old fashioned Untouchables-esque like anti-mob justice dished out. Bears suddenly scrappy. Defense shockingly good. Offense putting the pieces together. There were 3 or 4 plays in that game where I'm like, you just can't give up on Justin Herbert Fields yet. He has too much possibility that you got to at least consider. Can you not punt the quarterback question at least one more year?
Do they tank for a better draft pick, or do they try and knock the Packers out? We'll find out later.
Yes, Eagles, just rock bottom. Holy hell! They really thought bringing in former Patriots coaches would fix this.
They really fucked it up.
Yeah, both coordinators seem to think they're the weak side of the team and need to play it safe, which is a problem because that's not how it works. That's the opposite of complementary football. Seattle, what the hell, guys? Theoretically easy win against Pittsburgh. Carter doesn't like Mason Rudolph because he started a fight with Myles Garrett and faced no consequences for that. The NFC South, poop.
Yep. And now we're all caught
Anyway, on to our notes, which I do feel like is interesting part of this.
Yeah, this is the most
Um,
important part, so that's why the recap was so easily able to be so quick.
yes, wasn't completely catastrophic.
Yeah.
So yes, do you want to kick this one off? Because
All
this
right.
was a
How
conversation
hot
starter.
how hot do we want to start? Do we want to start kind of hot or really hot?
Really hot.
All right, the refs, Dallas and Detroit. What the heck? First off,
Yes.
as much as it pains me to admit it, that was a great game up until that final thing. And then the tomfoolery and shenanigans happened. So the Lions just scored with very little time left. I believe, give me 1 second, 23 seconds left.
Yes.
And
Carving up the Cowboys defense in a very impressive fashion.
yes, they really just they almost smoked them embarrassingly much. But and then came the shenanigans. So there was a 2-point conversion attempt, and they scored, clearly like won the game, and then a flag was on the play because allegedly somebody who was his name, Decker,
Yes.
was claimed to be ineligible by the refs after the play of like being an ineligible receiver or something like that. And here's the thing: there's plenty of video of showing him reporting to the refs before that exact play.
Yes.
So what
So
happened?
basically what had happened was, so the Lions, to kind of throw off the Cowboys, had multiple guys run up there. But clearly, you see the guy who's actually going to get the ball signaling he's the eligible man. And what happened was the ref either was like too stressed out or too in his head. It didn't quite pick up on which number the guy was wearing. So
Yeah,
he said the wrong number. He said 70 and not 68, I believe it was.
yeah, it was like that kind of closeness.
Yes. So resulting in the referee um, throwing the flag, basically the wrong flag, because if he had just listened carefully, he would have known. And on top of that, Dan Campbell claims he like explained what he was going to do to the refs before the game. They wanted to have this play established. Um, and like, I love people are trying to defend it of like, well, don't try and confuse the refs. And I'm like, it's the most
That's their
important play of the
job.
game. Can you not fucking focus for 2 goddamn seconds and
Yeah,
remember one of 3 numbers and announce it?
yeah, and it's like one of those like silly things where it's just like this is clearly some BS. Like going back to last year, you have the Eagles Super Bowl loss kind of due to a flag on the play by because Bradbury had a hold, and it was just like a. It's one of those things where it was just like a come on, like the refs are making a game deciding play, but it's also like wow, he actually did flag them. That's kind of like that makes sense. The Lions should have, I would have said, fought the refs right on the spot. Like, you send in your third strings to tell them to go jump the refs and thank them for their
Because,
duty.
yeah, again, this game had severe consequences. The Lions were still in position to get the second seed, and
Yes.
now, like, it's really unlikely that they will, because that was the tiebreaker between them and Dallas.
Yeah, no, they were. That was literally the deciding factor for them, and they scored. They did that. Then they ran another one where they got caught with a freaking like false start or something like that, sent back 10 yards or something.
Offsides on the defense,
Offsides
and they
on the
go again.
defense, yeah. And then the
And
last one,
on one hand, it really is like, all right, if you get screwed once, you probably should just kick it to overtime. You're
yeah,
beating these guys, you got this. But I empathize with Dan getting so tilted that he's like, fuck it, I'm going for 2 every fucking time.
yeah,
Like, I would too if I got screwed that bad.
yeah. And he did it twice, but they made him do it a third time, which the guy just barely dropped. And it's just like, my God, it's like this is one of those plays where it's just like it could be any two teams if they played like this with like the same implications for playoff picture and stuff like that, and it had the same ending. Every fan base is going to be mad.
Right.
Like, it doesn't have to be Lions Cowboys. It could have been Chiefs Browns for all I care, and it would have the same level of anger. And the ref's punishment is that ref team's not going to be calling calls in the playoffs. And
Yeah, which is like the
and
most consequence that we've seen. But it's like, yeah, that's not enough. Like, it truly is insane how much money the NFL makes, and all of their refs are part time, and
yeah,
there's just so little oversight. And I believe this comment I made was ironically on another episode that died mid recording. Just remember, kids, unions are not inherent goods nor evils. They are
yes,
tools whose morality is decided by the people in charge. And the NFL referees are a bunch of incompetent clowns who want to protect themselves from consequences.
yeah, and it's like it's insane with all the technology they used to be able to review sideline plays and stuff like that in like New York and
Mhm.
stuff. They couldn't review him declaring before and or after the game, and they do like the NFL has the power to turn the game over. But that's admitting they were wrong with their refs.
Right.
That's the thing.
And yeah, and it's like they're in a position where it's like, is it better to admit we were wrong and look dumb, or like what? Basically, they're just trying to do the calculus of like what. The only thing the NFL cares about is making sure people don't think it's rigged, because at the
Yes.
end of the day, it isn't. It's just horrific incompetence from the refereeing.
Yes.
But like the like the feeling of riggedness will be more compelling than whether or not it really is. So like
Yeah.
they're desperately trying to they're basically making all their decisions on what avoids people thinking that.
Yeah. And there's also the factor of like it's America's team, one of the most hated teams in the entire league. Um that they're doing it for. It like that doesn't help the cases of it being possibly rigged or not. Like I feel like if it was like let's say the Packers versus the Packers versus the Bears where like or no, not Packers. Let's do Bears Panthers. This happened in, whereas they're not really America's teams. They're not really like the most hated or the most beloved. People would still be outraged, but they wouldn't be thinking it is as rigged for whatever team won that as compared to the Cowboys. Like
Mhm.
Cowboys, 49ers, Chiefs, hell, even if it was for the Eagles in their favor, it like there would be call like that's like I don't know, guys. This thing might be rigged. Like, there's a clear bias happening if for like three different plays that two of them, the one team should have won, and they had to run back for a really stupid reason, and then less of a stupid reason, but it was still like should have had it in the first place.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just, man, it like I saw it live and I just couldn't believe it. Like, and it's not just that they got it wrong; it's that they doubled down. Like, straight up, the pool report accuses like the Lions of lying.
Yeah,
Like, straight up is they just make up fake shit, and it's like there has to be some kind of consequence to that. Like, again, it's like again, people spend too much money on these games now.
yeah,
There's too much at stake for this to just be chill about this. And I keep saying something's got to change, but it should have changed a while ago. And it's like, what the hell are we doing here at some point?
yeah. No, it's one of those like legitimately insane endings. Like,
Boy, Vey.
by God, and it shows. Yeah, no, there's clear evidence of the Lions doing what they were supposed to. And it's just like it's insane. It's there has to be something done about the refs. Like I know it's been kind of like a little bit of a meme all season of like, ooh, the refs suck. Ooh, the refs rig the game. Ooh, the refs play favorites. But
Right. And
like,
at some point, I got tired of it. But this is like this felt like a like new bridge crossed. This
yeah,
felt like a bridge too far, where it's like this was so egregious and so many consequences
yeah,
and like so much screwed up that like, come on, guys, we can't like
you
pretend
can't
this
be
is
doing
fine.
this. Yeah, and it's like you feel. I mean, you feel bad about it, but like for especially for the Lions, and it's just shenanigans. It's clearly like they clearly succeeded the play, but they couldn't figure out how to like overturn it enough. And like you gotta have full time refs. You gotta have training. You gotta have them be relatively unbiased, and you have to admit when they're wrong because like all season there's been some bogus calls on the refs and stuff, but like by the refs, and yeah, it's gonna happen. They're humans, but this is like the most blatant like fuck up.
Right. Like, I refuse to believe in a world where McDonald's can have how many stores basically operating exactly the same that you can at least do a little better than this.
Yeah. Anyway, Pro Bowls were announced.
Oh, yes. And everyone complains and whinges. I just I don't know. It's tough because on one hand, like Pro Bowls do decide a lot in terms of like
Who
sort
everyone
of
thinks is good.
well, yes, perception, there's incentive bonuses, and like for offensive linemen who don't have a lot of means of proving themselves, they are ways of sort of establishing your sort of Hall of Fame bona fides.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I'm torn because on one hand it's like, well, we shouldn't let fans vote on this. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but that's why we have the All Pro. Like we have an elevated version, but the All Pro has less options.
Yeah.
And like for all the talk about snubs, I'm not that outraged this year.
I mean, a snub from the AFC, like, so Josh Allen, like, a lot of people seem outraged that Josh Allen was snubbed as quarterback, but also look at the quarterbacks they picked. They picked Tua, Lamar, and Patrick Mahomes. I feel like, though, that's not, like, you can't be too mad about that.
Yeah, it's like whatever. Like it's about stories, and to a story of like Manning, one of the best offenses in the league, is like more appealing. Whereas Josh Allen had to fight the narrative the entire year that he's a turnover machine, that like he is costing his team games,
Yeah.
and that the Bills are washed. Like whatever. Like, and it's not like, but one between him, like one of those three quarterbacks is probably going to the Super Bowl, and the other will fill in.
Yeah.
Like it's fine.
That's almost
Everyone relax.
certain. Yeah. But, and then there's fucking the NFC ones. Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Matt Stafford as the three quarterbacks.
Yeah, and like I'm a little more butthurt about Hurts like missing out because of Purdy, but I'm
Yeah.
like, again, I can't get that strong. Like I can't get that strongly mad about it.
I'm more butthurt that Hurts got pushed out. Like Purdy is like he's memed enough that he kind of earned it, I would say. But because like Pro Bowl is pretty memey, but Matt Stafford over Jalen Hurts that's the question mark for me.
See, personally, I've really liked watching Stafford this year, but I can see where you're coming from. And again, I think it's just the vibes of like the Eagles have been collapsing,
Oh yeah,
and the Rams, against all odds, made the playoffs. Yeah, for me, it's just like I don't know.
But no,
Like I just think they need a better system for delineating who is a Pro Bowler. Like
yeah,
if you just want to make a super big list where every position gets like an extra 2 or 3 spots, because like my thing that annoys me is just like when guys say they're not going to go or like have to go to the Super Bowl, and then we just get some really random ones like Mac Jones getting in,
yeah,
and it's like so he gets to call himself a Pro Bowler forever now.
yeah. Now here's the part I'm most angry about. They didn't put Jake Elliott as the kicker. It was
That's
Brandon
actually
Aubrey for the Dallas Cowboys, who it's like, come on, Jake Elliott's made some insane kicks. Give him.
it's
something.
tough because that Cowboys kicker is insane, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. Did anyone else make a 60+ yarder in the pouring rain to win a game you had no business winning?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, it's I don't know. I've actually warmed up to the Pro Bowl more. Like, I hated when they moved it before the Super Bowl because I'm like, shouldn't it be? It's such a nice, like, refreshing mint after the Super Bowl. Putting it before just feels like it completely defeats the purpose. I have liked that they pivoted it off of like it being an actual football game. Like, I think it works better as like a group of mini games.
yeah. I like the fun that it is. One of the things that I said that should be an event at the Pro Bowl. I originally said old, like retired versus non-retired, but I will settle for an AFC versus NFC, a game of like horse for like kicking field goals. Like you choose a
Right.
spot, you go like you call like off the pole, weak foot, things like that. I feel like
Yeah.
that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there used to be a thing they would do with college quarterback. Like whoever like the big fun quarterback prospects were for any draft, they would have them do a series of competitions. Like
Yeah,
mini game stuff, like running around, like bobbing and weaving
yeah,
through tackle dummies while throwing passes. I just want all of that shit. Like literally like 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, leading up to a flag football game.
yeah,
Just think of like 3 fun mini games for every position. Like whatever again, like no one cares about the All Star game in the NBA is irrelevant. People care about they don't really care about the dunk competition anymore because they can't get any of the superstars to do it. But like the 3 point competition, like the passing skills challenge, all that stuff can be fun if you properly incentivize it and get the best guys.
yeah. No, I feel like that's so much that like there's so much that could happen in there, and they can have fun with it.
Right? And I refuse to believe they can't do this because people got excited over a freaking in season tournament in the NBA. Meanwhile, the Lakers are now on like a 6 game losing skid and might fire their coach by the end of the
Yeah.
which I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the fate you wanted to avoid for this. Um, and that leads us to our question of the week, which is one I just thought of. How many teams do you think are happy with how their season went? It feels like there's a lot of teeth gritting this season.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
lot of angst. How many of these teams do you think are 100% like, this is the best case scenario for us?
Um, I think some more than I'm 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 assuming the ones that are already in the playoffs could be considered happy.
I
Like
There's some that I wouldn't include, but I'm like, if you want to
oh
say
yeah,
making the playoffs is a victory, I can
I
consider
would
that.
yeah, I would say could was like you know for the fact that Eagles aren't happy with how things are going. You know for the fact that Dolphins are probably upset with how the Ravens game went.
Hmm.
And like you know that there's like a level of happiness, but also I feel like they can't be too mad as a team in general for because it's like you have a chance, you made it.
Right.
It's more of the bubble and um eliminated teams that are like up in the air. I think the Texans are very happy with how this season's gone. A very huge turnaround from last year,
Right.
and they're clear like they have a chance in the playoffs. I think they like what's happening. Then you got like things like I mean the Steelers have a winning record, so they're probably happy or at
Hmm.
least content. Um, I can tell you he's not happy. Vikings are definitely not happy. Um, Seahawks probably not happy. I would I would argue that the Broncos and Raiders are happy with how this season has gone.
Hmm.
They
I
have
can see that.
like they were clearly thrown through loops throughout the season. Um, and I think they're two teams that it's like they could be like, you know what, we have a chance now. We had a lot of reworking to do, but we can end it pretty high. They're both Broncos are 8-8, Raiders are 7-9. They can both end 8-9 this season.
Hmm.
So it's like I think they have a chance to be like they clearly had a show up, and it's like maybe this isn't so bad.
Right.
But yeah, those would be like the clear picks without over analyzing things and stuff that I would say are happy teams.
Right. I'm just going through now and trying to delineate. Ravens, absolutely. This is the best case scenario. Dolphins, if it wasn't for the downward slope where they might lose the division, I would say that. Colts, absolutely, because
Oh,
like
Colts
the
are
minute you lose your
stoked.
starting quarterback, it's like, well,
That's
that's
usually
it.
a
And
game
yet they've
over.
rallied.
Looking at
Right.
you, Bengals.
Yes. Texans, absolutely. Pittsburgh, I mean, probably. The fans want Matt Canada gone. Denver, yeah, because, last year was so bad. The Raiders, yeah, I think firing their coach they didn't like. Um, 49ers, totally. Cowboys, yeah, I would say so. Lions, absolutely. Tampa, Eagles, Rams, emphatically. Packers, probably. And then, I mean, the Vikings were expected to tank this year. Yeah, more in the AFC than the NFC, that's for sure.
Yeah, sorry, I just saw this thing, and it's pretty funny. Jordan Mailata said AJ Brown organized the team bonding escape room night to help get them back in
Oh, it's
check.
so fucking
That's
Jover. It's so Jover.
that's hilarious, and I love it.
Oh my god. I used to be friends with someone who ran one of those, or like whose job was like the puzzle thing, or like to give the clues. You just sit at a little table, and every couple of minutes, if they haven't made progress, you just
Yeah, you
tap a
point
button.
something out. But yeah, no, that's kind of funny. Love that. Um, anyway, yeah, it's happy teams. I think I feel like this season's gonna have has an extra amount of unhappy teams,
Mm.
even the ones that
Yeah,
are
it's
in
been a
playoff
weird.
picture.
Yeah, just the vibes have been very weird this season.
Yeah.
Um, shall we move on to your favorite pastime, schedule litigation?
Yes. I put this as a note. Before they released the schedule to be like to try like to be like I'm willing to put on my big boy pants and tell people what's what. Just put the NFL on watch, and let me say, I feel like they did a pretty good job.
Right. We didn't end up doing the full episode because it's very hard to schedule around the holidays, and
Yeah.
also neither of us were that angry about how it
No, it
like laid out.
like there's I was expecting something like when I was putting around that it was its own episode, I was expecting something a lot worse. But it's pretty doable. So first off, no Monday night game, no Thursday night
Right.
game, which is why this
Right. Which
video
is
hasn't
good
come out
because they
yet.
can't. Yeah. They can't because they can't schedule like that would be really unfair
Yeah,
to be like, hey, two teams, you got to be ready in 4 days.
yeah. So there is two Saturday night games, a 4:30 and an 8:15, which
Yes.
I effectively look at the 4:30 as your Thursday night game and the 8:15 as your Monday night game. And then usual time slots of 1 o'clock, 4:25. Yeah, I think they're all 4:25, and then a single Sunday night football game. So, in that Thursday night time spot, like the 4:30 on this afternoon, actually,
Hmm.
it's Steelers Ravens.
Yes.
Top the top team for the AFC. Like obviously, it's all division rivals, or division teams. But Steelers versus the Ravens, top team
Yes.
versus a hopeful making it in team.
Yes.
Ravens are gonna be resting some significant people, so the Steelers technically have the ability to make a move for the playoffs and get into that final picture, which I respect. They have a solid like 2/3 chance, or like a 67% chance if they win, they are in. Um, so I feel like that's a solid game.
Right.
The
Right.
A15. This is in my opinion the creme de la creme, and I would argue it should be
Oscar.
Sunday night, but also I like the fact that it is. I would have a thrill if I was one of these two teams, like huge fans of them, for them playing on Saturday night, and then you can just go hard and worry about everything on Monday, and you have a full 24 hours to recover. And that is Texans Colts.
Yes.
Love that.
Yeah. This honestly is a really good one. You get the number one seed in. Also, both of these games kind of could decide playoff
Yes.
fates. Pittsburgh absolutely needs to win. If they lose, the Bills automatically get a spot.
Yes.
Whereas Colts Texans, emphatically, one of these teams is
Winner
like 90% going to make the playoffs.
winner of this game gets the 7 seed. It's almost guaranteed. Unless
Right.
if a lot of shenanigans happens and they don't get the 7 seed, they could technically also win the division. If the
Right.
Titans pull
Right.
out the stops on the Jaguars, they could win the division. But these two teams, for like the entire second half of the season, have just been going tit for tat for every single game. Either they both win or they both lose. They've been matching records almost flawlessly. So love that. And this is one of those moments where it's like you can build a story out of all this.
Right.
Because it's like two teams that started major rookie QBs, and they've had to play their backups a decent bit throughout the season between the two of them. One significantly more than the other, and they have just been going game for game with each other.
Right. It's crazy how close they've been for 90% of this time.
Yeah. And it's
and they're also perfect matchups because it's like they decide they can lock playoff spots, but they don't lock enough playoff spots that it makes other games meaningless.
No, yeah.
Like the Bills game still matters.
Yeah.
The Jaguars game still matters.
It's not determining like who's 6 and who's 7. It's determining who's 7 and who's out, which is awesome. This would have been my don't sleep on game if it got snubbed to like the 1 o'clock time spot. But it is, that is almost the perfect spot for that. You can argue that it should be Sunday night, but it's a great spot. 1 o'clock games: Jaguars, Titans, Vikings, Lions, Falcons, Saints, Jets, Patriots. All right, don't bother watching the Jets, Patriots. Let's be real here. Bucks, Panthers. Don't bother watching that one either. Browns, Bengals not gonna really mean much, but whatever. And then, so like all those games are pretty much like pretty solidly should be there.
Right. They just exist because we're legally obligated. Because for some reason why do we not have relegation? Why do we force these teams to do this? The only one that interests me is weirdly the Patriots one because it could decide whether they get the second or third pick.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's like most draft positioning has been decided.
Yeah.
Relatively all playoff positioning decided. The Detroit one is interesting because the Vikings still could possibly make the playoffs, and the Lions could still maybe get the second seed.
Yeah, so Lions could technically earn the second seed, but if they win, and the Cowboys lose, and then the Vikings, if they win, they also need like the Packers to lose and a couple other significant conditions to happen for them to actually make it in. Where even if they win, they still only have an 11% chance. So I don't want to rule them completely out because things can happen. There's an 11% chance. But it's not looking like exactly an ideal scenario for them. And then everything else, like Falcons, Saints, winner has a slight chance of making it into the playoffs, but nothing. They need the Buccaneers to lose to the Panthers, and the Panthers have been the Panthers.
Correct.
Yeah, and then we got our 4 o'clock time slots. So our 4:25s, we have. I feel like this is this is also a very solid time slot. You have Bears, Packers. So Packers fighting for that 7 seed, and if they win, they're in, and then the Bears could play spoilers.
Yes, a big test for Justin Fields, and which very well could decide the direction of his career.
Yeah, also a big test for Jordan Love. Cowboys, Commanders. This point last year, Commanders pulled out a win on the Cowboys.
Do they have one more in them to keep them from getting the division?
Yeah, they could throw a spoiler in there. I don't have a lot of faith in the Commanders, but they could throw a spoiler in there. Broncos, Raiders. That could be. I feel like these are two teams that are clearly on the mend at this point.
Fun division rivalry.
Nice division rivalry. It's going to be played in Vegas, so where the Super Bowl is held. They're both out of it for playoff contention, but it could be good setup for next year. Eagles, Giants. Yep, that's a game. Seahawks, Cardinals. Seahawks are playing. If they win, they have decent odds of getting in.
Cardinals seemingly ready for the spoiler role for now.
Yeah, Cardinals could ruin that. Could be playing for a draft pick. Who knows? Rams 49ers. I'm low key kind of excited for as well because it is going to be a lot of backups.
Carson Wentz Bowl. Well, the Carson Wentz and Sam Darnold Bowl.
Yep.
Truly, two of the but I can fix him quarterback prospects of the last few years.
Yep. No, I feel like it's gonna like also like the 49ers are benching McCaffrey too to let him rest. So it's gonna be like an interesting situation because they got that number one seed locked up. I think all the contenders they've beaten that so like somebody tied them up and if they lost and somebody tied them up, all the people that had the chance have the chance to like have the same record they've either beaten or they win the tiebreaker. So
Right, right.
yeah, they're set in stone at that one seed. So I feel like they have the ability to have fun with it, and so do the
Right.
Rams. Chiefs Chargers. Honestly, that's a little bit more of a 1 o'clock spot. Chiefs are guaranteed in. Chargers are guaranteed not going to make it. They don't really
Right.
have the ability to play spoiler. They don't really have the ability to do much for it. Neither like Chargers did enough to like earn a solid like they have a very high draft pick already or a very low one. So
Right.
not much and it's not like a top 3, so it's like all right, they're kind of like in a
This really feels like they
no.
had to. They're like, it's on the West Coast, and we already have too many 1 o'clock games.
Yeah, that's definitely like that's one of those games where it's just like if it had a more prime spot, I'd be real mad. And then honestly, solid pick for Sunday Night Football, Bills Dolphins.
Kind of like, yeah, I think once they announced that, I'm like, it's probably going to be a good schedule. Uh, Basically, one of the most contentious rivalries in the NFL right now, even though, like, Josh Allen has been incredible outside of that one playoff game against the Dolphins, which they still won anyway. Um, Kind of everything's on the line because there is a chance the Bills need to win this to just get in, regardless of the division.
Yeah.
Like if the Steelers and Jaguars win, the Bills are suddenly on the outside looking out,
Yeah.
and they are going to need to win this game. Basically, it's everything on the line. I love that you can look at ticket prices, and the highest outside of this is $122 for Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
and this is $256.
Yeah.
Kind of the marquee game of the week in the marquee spot.
Yeah, no, this I'm very like the only possible like rearranging I would do like that's like not significant enough is I would bump that Chiefs Chargers to 1 o'clock and I'd bump Jaguars Titans to that 425 spot. That's the only
Yeah, that one really just feels like we follow rules with time zones
yeah.
than not.
Yeah, but the prime time, the premium location games, Steelers Ravens, Texans Colts, and Bills Dolphins, all great spots, great time slots, and they all matter. It's not
Right.
like it's not a bogus game. It's not going to be like Jets Patriots where it's just like, oh no, what's going to happen?
Yes.
Nothing.
Well done, NFL. The schedule czar gives you
Yes.
his seal of approval.
No, I'm very happy with it. All right, don't bother.
As
Gabe.
for yes.
Did you have something else to say, or were you going to lead it into?
No. We're going on to don't bother games. Yours is the one you've already done a little bit.
I've already taken the jab. Jets, Patriots, two teams that are already out. Their division, the other two teams in their division are fighting for a solid spot, and it is going like in playoff caliber stuff. They are fighting for draft picks.
Right. The Patriots are trying to get either the second or third pick. There's no way in hell Bill is going to tank this game, so it's probably going to be the third pick. And the Jets are huffing copium to imagine a scenario where Aaron Rodgers played this season, which is to say he could have still been bad, but he probably still would have accused Jimmy Kimmel of being a pedophile.
Yep.
Which is a story, that's all we need to say about it. It's, a pretty predictable turn of events by his standings.
Yeah, these two teams have, like, Jets and Patriots have a combined total number of wins of the Bills, the number 2 seed in their division.
Right. Arguably okay, we were worse in his rookie year, but in terms of seasons where Josh Allen was considered quote unquote good, easily a rock bottom season for this franchise.
Yeah, but it's it's a clear game for that. And yours, yeah, hit us with yours.
Mine is Eagles Giants. I know like there's some kind of jinx laws against this, but one, the Eagles barely beat them last time.
Yeah,
Two, it is two teams like there's a very real scenario where the Eagles realize they can't win the division and just start pulling starters. And then this just becomes a real like Marcus Mariota versus Tyrod Taylor is not necessarily
I want
like
I want
getting me out
Tanner
of my.
McKee versus Tommy DeVito.
It would be very funny
screw
if
the
the Eagles
second
go through
strings.
it.
Give me the third strings. That'll at least have fun.
Right. Yeah, and that's all I got to say about that.
All right. I let's get into our don't sleep on games. I like where this has. I like our picks.
Oh yeah. Yours is Jacksonville, Tennessee.
Yes. Um Here's why I picked this one, even though Tennessee seems like it's like kind of mid at best, because it depends on if Jacksonville gets that number 1 seed.
Yes.
If Jacksonville loses to Tennessee, the winner of Colts Texans gets that seed. They would have the best record and they would get that spot. And I feel like that's a very underrated spot to be in. Not the Texans, the Titans have the ability to reshape the entire division.
Right. And yeah, like at the end of the day, the Titans are another team who aren't going to tank. They're at least going to give their best game today. And given Jacksonville's struggles this season, given Jacksonville's sort of like inability to like sort of play to their standards, like yeah, that's kind of it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Like this is very much this could be Packers Lions from last year.
Yeah. I think it could be more significant than that. Like, because like in a world in the world where Tennessee loses, Jacksonville pretty much has that first spot, and then of the division, and then so they get that 4th seed, and then Titans or Texans and Colts play for the other spot in the playoff picture. But then but Tennessee wins, the division is completely turned over on its head. The ultimate team of that division is now all of a sudden not the ultimate team of that division. And
truly, I think the consequences of that would actually be pretty profound.
Yeah. So it's like I feel like the consequences of it are so much more severe than it lets off to be.
Yes. And my don't sleep on game is Chicago versus Green Bay. Kind of a lot of the hobby horses I've been talking about. This could be the moment Justin Fields locks himself in as the Chicago quarterback. It is a huge game for the Green Bay Packers. Can Jordan Love do what Aaron Rodgers couldn't and lock his team into the playoffs? Do you end on a high note, or do you have questions going into next offseason? Again, another like, oh, this could decide the direction of the division for the next few years.
Yeah. I think I can agree. This is 100% a trend setter.
Right? There will be consequences.
Yeah. There's going to be consequences if the Packers win. There's going to be consequences if the Packers lose.
Right. And it will basically decide who both of these teams are going into the next like 3+ years.
Yeah. It's gonna be like, yeah, no, both of these games are division, like, especially with how young. I don't want to say young, but like how young the South AFC South is, and how I guess I guess the turmoil of the NFC North. Turmoil might be more severe of a word than I want to use, but it's like
Mm,
they're Rogerless now. The Vikings have had an atrocious season, and they don't have an hopeful outlook coming out of it. The Possibly without Kirk, the Lions are all of a sudden the number one seed for the division. It's like
right, right,
there's a lot of like this could be a very future telling game.
right.
And I think
And I
it's
think that's the advantage of this season having such weird vibes. It will cause like cultural changes for teams, and that will make the next couple years very different than they would have been
yes.
otherwise.
I think I think we're at a very much a clear turning point of the league as a whole, where you got you have some of your like the old guard teams of like teams that have been previously good and are continuing to be good, of like the 49ers, the Eagles, Cowboys, Chiefs, Dolphins, Ravens and stuff, are clearly holding like able to hold top tier spots. But then you have hodgepodge of the Detroit Lions, the AFC South being super competitive, the statistically not terrible but not great Vikings, who usually make a wild card spot, or depending on how their division goes, are on the outs. It's a time to be alive. Where I think that the teams that we considered the worst teams last year are no longer going to be considered some of the worst teams next year.
Correct. Shall we wrap it up for the week?
We shall. Send us home.
Thank you all. Thank you all for listening. This was another fun week to talk football, even in a slightly truncated form. Uh, I am so excited to finally, after this weird long season, to get to the GD playoffs. Whether we win, whether we lose, we'll all be there to laugh about it. And
Yep.
until next time, I'm Carter.
I'm Kevin.
Have a great last week of football, people.
Let's go.